This is the Sixth Man Show, an Orlando Magic podcast, with your hosts, Kevin Tucker and Jonathan Osborne, covering all things Magic basketball. By fans, for fans. Go Magic! What's going on, Orlando Magic fans? You guys are back with the Sixth Man Show. Today is February 17, 2025. Jonathan Osborne here, as always, joined by my co-host, Kevin Tucker. Kevin, the Orlando/Osceola Magic, home of the first ever back-to-back-to-back NBA Slam Dunk Contest. How we doing?
I'm good. I love that there was all this talk over the last couple months about, the Pat Riley three-peat trademark thing, once the Chiefs were knocking on the door, and hey, we didn't need it for them, but we needed it for old McClung. So yeah, that was pretty electric on Saturday night. Again, third time in a row.
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about some of the controversy. I guess it's kind of ridiculous that there's any controversy around it. I mean, if you watch the Slam Dunk Contest, it's pretty apparent that the correct person won, unlike when our guy Aaron Gordon, wearing the jersey and in memoriam, I guess, of his Slam Dunk Contest robberies, exactly. That was real controversy. Is going, or not what is going on, but just some of the tomfoolery and ridiculous things that were said Saturday night after the Slam Dunk Contest. It's not really controversy as much as it is stupidity, but nonetheless, we will break that down in just a little bit. As you all are listening to this on Monday the 17th, we wanted to take the opportunity to remind you that today, on Nike.com/Jordan.com, Paolo's Jordan Air Player Edition, the Seattle Rotaries colorway, those are dropping today. Usually Nike Jordan, those drops go live around 10 a.m. However, we'll just be keeping track of that throughout the morning. And I know I'm looking to get a pair. Kevin, I know you're looking to get a pair. Just really excited for these to drop and get our hands on these.
Yeah, and if for nothing else, just to support Paolo and show Jordan, hey, this guy has quite the fan base, quite the following, and hopefully this is the first of many that will eventually come from the P5 product line. I'm stoked.
Yeah, so as you're listening to this, if it's before 10 a.m., make sure you head on over to Jordan.com, get ready for those to drop. Just excited to get those in hand. Kevin, some news dropped kind of in the middle of us recording the last episode, but we didn't really realize it until after we were done. So after last Wednesday's game, that would have been, after the Magic played the Charlotte Hornets, Jusuf Nurkic, who had recently been traded to the Hornets from the Phoenix Suns, he had a pretty interesting quote in the locker room after the game. So this is Jusuf Nurkic, as initially reported by Jason Beatty.
Former Portland Trailblazer, I should add. That's the context that's important here.
A lot of important context here, but yes. So Hornets center Jusuf Nurkic on the Magic. I think they are a really good young team, and they are doing a really good job. They have a really good coaching staff, but I think they are missing one player. I can't name it, but that's my little fella from Portland. But I love my Portland people, but I think they are waiting and missing one player to be a really good team. Also, one thing that should be noted is that this was completely wiped from the Hornets post-game availability videos that you can find on their website and on YouTube. They purposely kept this out for obvious reasons. But Kevin, that is quite the quote. It feels very on the nose, as if he knows something almost. What did you think of that quote?
First off, I find it hilarious. Little fella from Portland, that's really funny.
Yeah. I guess we should say everybody believes he's talking about Anthony Simons.
Correct. Yes. And that's part of why I think it's so funny, because I can't say who. Little fella from Portland, and it's come on, you just said who without saying who. But anyway, very funny. But you're right.
Anthony Simons, who is 6'3", by the way, not exactly a little fella. I guess compared to Jusuf Nurkic, he is, but.
Probably compared to most of the rosters. See how many guys are 6'3" or shorter on the Portland Trailblazers. It's going to be pretty obvious. But then as far as, the quote itself, I think you're exactly right. There is 0% chance that Jusuf Nurkic just pulled this out of thin air, right? It's not like he played the Magic tonight. It was You know the one guy in the entire NBA that this team is missing? It's my little friend from Portland, right? There's no way. I think you're exactly right. Conversations have had to happen before. He's clearly friends, obviously with Anthony Simons, for him to be speaking about him that way. It sounds like Anthony Simons has mentioned this to him before, right? That's the only explanation, right? Like, whether it was just, hey, I want to someday play back in Orlando, my, home, or whether it was, hey, it sounds like Orlando's trying to trade for me, like some version of that. There had to be a conversation about this, right? Like, you don't just pull that out of thin air.
No, I'm right there with you. And for those of you that may or may not know, Anthony Simons, named after Penny Hardaway, obviously, from Orlando, grew up in Altamont Springs, went to Edgewater High School, went to IMG Academy. He is a Central Florida kid, and during the draft process, when he met with the Orlando Magic, he said it would be a dream to play for his hometown team, and some dreams never die, apparently. And this to me does feel like that there have been conversations, either Anthony Simons expressing his childhood dream would be to one day go back and play for the Magic, or if there have been trade conversations between the Magic and Portland's front office. It just, I can't ever remember a quote quite like that from a post-game interview with a player.
Yeah.
And to me, that's what was just like, man, you really had the what to come out and just blatantly say that. And then obviously it's not technically tampering, but it would be very weird for an official team account, or for them to release that on their website or on their YouTube channel, right, for a player on their roster talking about not even their team, but a player on another team possibly being moved to the team that they just played. Right. Just there's a lot of things that are just very odd and interesting about this.
And it's not even that, Nurkic just got traded from the Blazers to the Hornets. No, this is 2 teams ago now that he's talking about. He's talking about not his past team, the Suns, his double past team, the Blazers. And the fact that he's suggesting a player from one team get traded to another team that's not his team, the whole thing is very funny. Again, I found it very entertaining. And we'll have to see if anything comes of it this offseason, maybe.
And not only 2 teams ago, but he hasn't played for Portland in 2 seasons.
Exactly, yeah.
It's not like he got traded to Phoenix earlier this year from Portland, or played for Portland even last season. Portland. He played for Portland last in the 2022-2023 season. So that leads me to believe that Anthony Simons has probably expressed a desire to eventually play in Orlando.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he's calling my little fella back in Portland. I'm guessing the odds are that they were pretty good friends and probably talk at least somewhat regularly now.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts, Kevin, on the Magic if they were to make a move for Anthony Simons? Some people love the fit. Some people don't love the fit. I understand both sides of the conversation there. Like, he's not a great defender. You would be trading most likely some defense for offense by putting him in the lineup, and then he's coming up for an extension soon. So there's a lot of things to think about that. But just like the narrative obviously is awesome, him being a Central Florida kid. And offensively, it seems like exactly what the Magic need.
Yeah. I've mentioned this before. I would hope, like, in best case scenario, maybe best is a little bit of a strong term. Like, in my mind, he could be a more consistent Cole Anthony type. So I think that's exciting. Now, Cole, the last week before the All-Star break, was quite good. And so we'll see if Cole can keep that up after the
last
All-Star
few
break.
weeks he's been pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully Cole can keep that up, and then we don't have to worry about acquiring an Anthony Simons. But yeah, just someone to come off the bench, instant scoring, can score at all 3 levels, shoot the ball at least better than how our current guys are shooting it. So I think the fit is there. But it also sounds like Portland would potentially be open to that. I mean, obviously with their guard situation now, Scoot Henderson seems to be figuring things out. A lot of us, thought he was going to be surefire. Well, let me back up. We thought Charlotte was going to surely regret not taking Scoot Henderson, and then last year happened. And it was like, oh, he didn't have the best year. This year he's starting to figure things out, and so it feels like their guard situation is Anthony Simons is the odd man looking out, is what it looks like, or odd man out is what it's looking like. So yeah, I think it's definitely possible, but we'll have to see what happens.
Yeah, so we're talking about a guy who in 32 minutes a game for Portland this year, he is shooting 42.6% from the floor on a little over 15 attempts per game, but shooting 37.4% on 8 attempts from behind the arc. So overall offensive efficiency isn't exactly where you would want that to be. Felt like, a couple of years ago in Portland, like 2021, 2022, averaged 17.3 points per game, 44% from the floor, 40% from behind the arc, and almost 3 attempts. And then the following year, 2022, 2023, had 21 points per game, 44.7% from the floor, 37.7% from behind the arc on 9 attempts a game. So maybe the last couple of seasons, it does seem like you mentioned he's kind of the odd man out. Defensively, he isn't fantastic, to put it lightly. He definitely struggles on that end. And next year, he's set to make $27 million. So are you paying a guy $27 million to come off the bench? And then after that, he's an unrestricted free agent. So what does that extension look like? I don't really see him as a guy who is in line to get a significant raise at that point. Like, are we going to be paying this guy $30 million a year like we are Jalen Suggs? I don't think most people would try to make the argument that Anthony Simons is impactful as Jalen Suggs. So it's definitely interesting. I really like the fit offensively, especially if maybe he's not exactly relegated to be like a spot up shooter, but maybe not asked to do as much, having guys like Paolo and Franz and Jalen Suggs and Anthony Black to sort of play off of. But again, it just comes down to how much are you going to be sacrificing defensively? How much are you willing to pay him? Could you kind of have a wink handshake agreement on a reasonable extension moving forward? If you don't, these are the things that Jeff Weltman was alluding to in his conversation with Mike Bianchi after the trade deadline. Like, we don't want to trade for a guy who's going to be here for a year and a half and is essentially going to be a rental. A lot of things to think about. My gut feeling would be that if Jeff Weltman goes out and makes this move this summer, I would be pretty ecstatic. I think a lot of people would be.
Yeah, I think it would excite people. I don't know if it's enough of a move to really move the needle, but maybe it is. Now, obviously, there's always the like you said, this is not his best season, but there's always the storyline of
he's only 25.
I know that. He's only 25 and going somewhere new, somewhere that's trying to win. Which I say that Portland's been on fire right before the All-Star break, so they have been winning lately. But just a different culture, a different environment, and yes, going home, maybe that could jumpstart some of the statistical, issues that he's had this year. But yeah, I mean, it's certainly possible, and he has not played with a Paolo and Franz duo before, right? That's a totally different ball game, and I think could potentially open up his game even more if he does come to Orlando.
I think it like if he's just going to be a bench scorer, which again, when it comes down to extension and how much you're paying this guy, if that's his role, I see it being a pretty significant upgrade for the Magic. Yeah. Like, how many times have we talked about, especially recently with Paolo and Franz, where if you just get one more guy to step up tonight, you might have won this game. And we've said that, at different points throughout the season, but I expect the Magic probably to make like 2 pretty significant moves, like 2 major moves, or like 1 major move and a few other like pretty significant upgrades in the rotation. It feels like that's what this team needs. It doesn't feel like we're 1 move away. It does feel like the roster needs a bit of a shakeup. But if you come away from that's like your biggest move that you made, and then maybe you make a couple of other not insignificant moves, but maybe moves that aren't quite as big, I still think we could come away from that offseason feeling like it's a success. But I think a lot of people felt like this past offseason was a success, and although I'm not ready to call it a complete failure, it definitely is not shaping so far up to be as successful as we had thought at the time.
Really fast, I was just curious, and so I looked at some Anthony Simons numbers. How many times he's played 370 games in his career? Of those 370, how many times do you think he scored 35 or more? Just take a guess.
I'm going to guess it's more than 10.
It is. It's 12. Yeah. 12 times, 35 or more. I think it's 4. Or let me see. 4 of them are 40 or more. Career high 45 points. Right? Like, that we do not have that on the bench. Like,
no.
Cole Anthony, great locker room presence, great, all those things. We've never gotten 45 from Cole, and that's not for a lack of opportunity, right? And obviously, it's a little bit different situation. Can't exactly compare apples to apples, but I mean, that's some offensive firepower off the bench that we certainly don't have. Yeah,
it's definitely gonna put a dent in the bank account or in the cap situation. Like, you just look at it on their face right now. Anthony Simons is making more than double what Cole Anthony is making, right? Like, it's one of those things where you sort of get what you pay for. But for this team to make significant improvements, like they are going to have to pay guys. And if it comes down to you make that move and he ends up being a guy that you have to pay, even if he's getting paid the same, like if he's making $27 million a year, I probably would pass on that. Now, some people will say, like, hey, like, you're going to have to pay somebody at some point, blah, blah, blah. I don't know that I'm ready to make us like a, first apron team before we've won a playoff series. Like, we have to toe the line here, because like you and I have talked about a ton, Franz and Paolo aren't even scratching their primes yet. And you really get one shot at going all in. Like, if you look at what the Celtics, and I know we've brought this up plenty of times, but if you look at what the Celtics have done, they have put together the foundational pieces of a winner. And then when they reach the finals, mostly with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and Marcus Smart and some of those other guys, then like, okay, we're going to make some tweaks here. Those guys made the finals, and we're going to make a couple of moves, see if we can go all in. Okay, we won the title. Well, now we don't care really what we have to pay to keep this team together in the short term. If we can get another title or 2 or even 3 titles out of this window, then it's sort of all worth it. And in the new nature of the collective bargaining agreement moving forward, it seems like that's going to be the formula, is getting as close as you can to the edge and evaluating whether or not you have enough to get it done. And if you do with the guys that you have, then you make a couple of other moves that kind of put you over the top, and then you're going to overpay and pay through the nose for a few years to keep that group together. So I think Boston really is the business and the cap model and the team building model moving forward. You don't really have the ability to pay more than 2 guys the max, which they have with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. And when we say the max, we mean like the max, right? Like the 30% of the cap type of maxes. There are other guys that are getting paid their max, but that's not necessarily like the max. There's a difference between what an individual player's max is and then some of these other guys who have made all NBA teams and stuff like that. So like Jalen Suggs is a perfect example. He basically, he didn't get paid his max because he was the 5th pick in the draft. But like I believe Derek White was paid his max to stay in Boston. But that's kind of what teams are up against moving forward. And I don't know what the answer is. It would be really simple if we could just call up Jeff Whitman and say, hey, Anthony Simons is the answer. Do whatever you have to do to get that guy and you're going to win a title. But it doesn't work like that. Yeah. It's going to be an interesting offseason. But if Anthony Simons is one of the things that we come away with this offseason, seeing that notification come through, I'll be really pumped about that.
Yeah, it would definitely be definitely turn some heads. That's for sure.
Okay, let's take a look at the state of the Magic. Not really any updates, but just want to remind you all where we are right now. At 27-29, the Magic are 7th in the Eastern Conference as of the All-Star break. We're 18 games back of Cleveland, 12.5 games back of Boston, 10 games back of New York. So it feels like 1, 2, and 3 are super out of reach. But Indiana sitting at 4, the Magic are 4.5 games back, 3.5 games back of 5th place Milwaukee, 2.5 games back of 6th place Detroit. We are 7th. So we're a half game up on Atlanta and Miami. and then 4.5 games up on Chicago. So you're a loss, and then Atlanta and Miami win away from being the 9th seed right now. And again, 4.5 games up on Chicago. So far on the season, the Magic are 29th in offensive rating with an offensive rating of 107.2, third in defensive rating with a defensive rating of 108.7, and 18th in the league in net rating with a negative 1.5. Taking a look at the injury report, obviously Mo Wagner's out for the season with the ACL. And last we left them, Jalen Suggs still out with the quad contusion. Jonathan Isaac missed the last game before the All-Star break with like low back tightness. Expecting Jonathan Isaac to be back for sure on Thursday against Atlanta. Jalen still kind of feels up in the air. I don't think I'm as confident right now as I was maybe a week ago that we would definitely see Jalen back. Because like you see videos of him set shooting after practice, and it seems like he's still kind of favoring that left knee a little bit. But we're definitely hoping to get him back after the All-Star break, Kevin. Taking a look at the standings, I wanted to ask you, like, what do you think is the most realistic, like the best realistic outcome for the Magic at this point in terms of their seeding in the Eastern Conference?
Well, I think the 4 seed is unlikely, but not unrealistic. Okay, so you mentioned that we're, what did we say, 4.5 back? That feels very unlikely, but I wouldn't consider it unrealistic. I think there is a path to the 4 seed, but it's pretty low. The odds are pretty low for me. I think the most realistic ideal situation would be the 5 seed. You know, you're 3.5 games back of the Bucks at 5. Bucks have a tough schedule coming up. Bucks are without Giannis right now. So I think that's attainable, and you only have to pass 2 teams to get there, right? Right now, between you and the 5 seed are the Pistons and the Bucks. So that feels reachable. Again, I think the 4 seed is still within reach. We'll know very quickly, like in the next 2 weeks, if that 4 seed is still a viable option. But I think if I were to place, I don't want to say a bet, but like if I were to guess, maybe the most ideal place that I think is possible would be the 5 seed Bucks, but we'll see.
What does your gut tell you? Where will the Magic end up in the Eastern Conference at the end of the regular season?
This is a mixture of gut and just heart, but
no, I want gut first. You separate the two, and then you can bring them back together. But for just a second, I want you to separate the two.
I believe the Magic will avoid the play-in. I really do believe that, even though they've given me no reason to believe that over the last month and a half. I believe that's what's going to happen. So I think. So
we're both saying 6.
6, but I think it's pretty close to 5. Like, I really think 5 is there for the taking. It feels like a 50-50 for me, like a coin flip. Maybe it's like 51-49 in favor of 6 right now, though.
So if we're 6, it seems all but certain that it would be a Magic-Knicks first-round matchup.
Yeah, I mean, they're only 2.5 games back of the Celtics, so, I mean, it's not a lock. You know, Celtics could fall to 3, but yes, more than likely. They could.
No thanks.
2.5 games is nothing.
I know they could, but I really don't want that.
Oh, correct. Yes.
As much as I don't want to see the Knicks in the first round,
yeah,
I absolutely don't want to see the Celtics in the second round.
Absolutely.
Cleveland's the 1 seed in my mind. Boston, they're 5.5 games back. Over the last, what do they have? 28 games left. It would just be a crazy collapse.
Right
at that point, you know,
I believe the Celtics fall to 3 before they, hit 1. Yeah, if I were to pick 2,
I agree with that. Yeah. So if the Magic get to 5, who do you think the matchup would be?
I think still the Pacers. Yeah,
I really think so.
Yeah, if we get to 5, that's because the Bucks continue to fall, and I don't think the Pistons are going to jump them. So I say Indiana just stays there at 4, and that's your 4-5 matchup. Pacers Magic. I mean. Sign me up for that, by the way. Like,
100%.
That would be wild. And then you have a chance to play potentially the Cavs in the second round if you beat the... Wow, we're getting way ahead of ourselves. This team's got to make the playoffs first, because right now we're spiraling. But yeah, I think that's very possible.
I feel like Milwaukee will find a way to end up 4th. they haven't shown anything. And you know me, I'm just not really super high on Milwaukee, but I think I'm probably still less high on Indiana at this point. So, but we got a lot of basketball in between now and then before we see how all of that shakes out.
Yeah. Jonathan, this weekend, we mentioned a little bit at the top, little all-star weekend action. Unfortunately, no Magic guys in the all-star game on Sunday night, or games in this new format, 3 different all-star games. Well, that's a whole different conversation. We won't have that tonight. But Magic involved Friday night in the Rising Stars Challenge, and then Saturday involved, of course, in the Slam Dunk Contest, and then Sunday in the G League Showcase. Let's really quickly go through some of these. Obviously, we're going to talk a lot about the Slam Dunk Contest, but we do want to hit on the other things that did feature some Magic guys. Again, Friday night, the Rising Stars Contest or Challenge or whatever they call it now. Again, another, different format than traditionally. There's 4 teams. The Magic featured Anthony Black and Tristan da Silva on the same team, Team T, for Tim Hardaway. Those guys went first. Jonathan, I don't know if you've seen the highlights from this game, and the answer is probably no, because there weren't really that many. All these games weren't super exciting. This Team T, with Tristan da Silva, Anthony Black, ends up falling 40-34 in this first round game. Tristan da Silva played 10 minutes, hit both of his shots, including a 3, so that was all right. Otherwise, he was pretty quiet. It's always interesting in these games if you are a point guard or a point forward or someone who brings the ball up the court, you pretty much get the spotlight in these games because these guys tend to just try to take over and stuff. And that was no exception. In this game, Anthony Black ended up dishing the ball pretty well, had 4 assists on the night, but he blew a dunk. And so that, if you're in an all-star weekend event and you blow a dunk, it just kind of wipes out whatever nice statistical things you did. So yeah, that team fell, and that was the end of their night. One and done for them. Again, 40-34. G League also had a team in this one, which did feature McClung, who obviously we'll talk about in a second. They played in the second game, and they won their second game before losing in the final. But yeah, McClung ended up with 5 points in that game. That first game, didn't play in the second game. I don't know if he was just minutes restriction type thing with the Slam Dunk Contest, but yeah, not a whole lot to report from the Rising Stars on Friday other than it happened and 3 Magic players played. So that was Friday. Skipping ahead to Sunday, the G League Showcase, I think is what they called it. Had
the next up game.
Next up showcase. Trevelyan Queen got to play in that, had 10 points, 6 boards, 2 assists. Unfortunately, in a loss, 36-32. But the story of the day, former Magic man, Kevon Harris. I don't know if you saw this. He won the MVP of the tournament. His team won the showcase. He ended up in that final with 13 points and, again, won MVP. So shout out to Orlando Magic and Osceola/Lakeland Magic legend Kevon Harris, for having a really good day there. And then, obviously, there was the moment we were all waiting for Saturday night. McClung going for the 3-peat, and boy, did it not disappoint. First off, before we go into that, little side note, I think you should tell the people what you did Saturday night, because it might have been just as fun as the Slam Dunk Contest.
Well, so I went into this weekend with I could choose being guilty or feeling guilty or feeling guilty. Either feeling guilty for the time that I don't spend with my wife during the season, or feel guilty for not being glued to the TV during some of these Magic related All-Star weekend activities. And this year I decided to feel guilty about not watching the Magic constantly, and decided to take my wife out Friday night for Valentine's Day, but then also Saturday night. So Saturday night, a lot of you may not be familiar with this individual, but you're going to learn about him today. If you have kids around, probably not a good time to go and look into what I'm about to tell you about now. It's adult content, nothing too crazy, but there's a comedian. His name is Morgan J, and his show and his act is pretty unique. What he does is he basically has like a looper and like auto tune set up through that, where he goes around the crowd and like improvises and sings and actually gets the audience involved and has the audience sing as well. So if you haven't seen him, look him up on TikTok or Instagram, whichever of those. He's got tons of clips there, and it's just, I've never seen anything like it. I didn't tell Carmen who he was or what we were doing. She kind of got to realize what was happening in real time, so that was a ton of fun. And he puts on a great show. We laughed a ton. We had a great time. And yeah, I got to see the highlights. Would have really liked to see all of this stuff happen in real time, especially with Mac. But I definitely don't regret my decision from Saturday night. I tell you. No,
I'm jealous, man. He's so funny. And I'm definitely pumped you got to see him in person. So
yeah.
The dunks.
So some people listening might know who he is because the night before on Valentine's Day, he was actually in Orlando.
Yeah.
Got really, really sick and was only able to do one of those shows, but luckily he was feeling better to do both of the Tampa shows. But yeah, maybe some of our listeners went and saw Morgan J on Valentine's Day.
Yeah, maybe. So let's talk about these dunks. First off, when you've done something 3 times, you feel like you're going to run out of ideas. That didn't happen with Mac because not only did he win the contest, but he really, really put on an amazing performance, right? Like some more legendary dunks, cementing himself as one of the greatest dunk contest dunkers of all time. Certainly top 5, maybe top 3, who knows? Depends on who you ask. But first dunk was the one over the Kia, kind of a little homage to the Blake Griffin thing, but except I think he did it better than Blake Griffin, honestly.
Way better than Blake Griffin.
Significantly, yeah. So he jumps over the Kia, but also does a 180, and it's, over the head, and that was amazing. Go ahead.
The Blake dunk, just to break this one down really quickly, like the Blake dunk, when people talk about gimmicks, and we'll talk about gimmicks, obviously, the Blake dunk genuinely was a gimmick because he jumped over the hood of the car.
Right.
Not only did Mac jump over the car, he jumped over the top of the car, grabbed the ball from a person that was hanging on to it, and then reverse dunked it, like double pumped and dunked it behind his head. The ability for Mac McClung to get off of the ground it's really spectacular. I could not, when I watched it after the fact, I could not believe that he was able to pull that off.
Yeah. 6'2", folks, and he's doing this stuff. Amazing. Second dunk was baseline. Another guy with the ball over his head, and he did like a 180 to catch and then 180 to spin. So it ends up being a 360. But yeah, it was nasty. 2 hands as well, which was kind of sick. So that those two both got a 50, sent him to the final round against Stefan Castle. The next dunk I thought was pretty wild. The 2-ball dunk where you got the one guy on the ladder who's got the ball pretty close to the rim and the other guy who, another homage, by the way. How about that? On the hoverboard in the Aaron Gordon jersey, spinning with the ball over his head. Mac jumps over him, windmills with the right hand, grabs the ball off the rim with the left hand, a double ball dunk. I don't know, that's kind of weird to say, but yeah, that was pretty wild. And again, some people say, the dunking the two, like the one was right there is basically a tip in, which is true. It is. But what he did with the right hand wasn't just like a simple dunk. The fact that he windmill with the right while dunking the left, that was pretty sick. I really like that one.
The level of concentration for that one to time the spin, to be able to jump over someone, not just standing up, but on top of a hoverboard.
Yeah.
To be able to grab that ball between the legs with both hands, switch it to the right, windmill, bring that one up over the top, and the focus to look up, grab the other ball and dunk that through. Like it's easy to underrate that dunk if you're not paying attention to just how much he has to do right in the course of a couple of seconds there.
Yeah. His final dunk, of course, another 50 here. He dunks over not just Evan Mobley, by the way. Evan Mobley standing on a platform. Like, Evan Mobley by himself wasn't tall enough, so they brought out this platform. It wasn't much, but it was still something. They get Evan Mobley on the platform, jumps over him, grabs the ball, taps it on the rim, and then dunks it, which I always appreciate dunks where you have to like watch the replay to fully grasp what happened. This was one of them. So yeah, another 50 for Mac McClung. Just a pretty wild night. I first off, before we get into our next thing, I loved the different like nods, like we talked about, to past, whether it's dunk legends or magic legends or whatever. I thought that was really, really cool. Additionally, having two former Magic dunk judges, I think, wasn't a bad thing either. T-Mac and Jason Richardson, both on the panel for this one. But yeah, Mac McClung ends up all perfect scores, sweeps his third slam dunk competition. And so, Jonathan, there weren't a ton of, highlight Magic dunks this week, but fortunately, there's some pretty good ones from Saturday night. And so we get to pick one for this week's Jam Hot Chicken Jam of the Week. I'm struggling. It's my turn this week to pick it, Jonathan. I'm struggling really mightily between the Kia dunk and the double dunk, because I really liked the optics of the double dunk. I think it's really special. But I am going to go with the Kia dunk, jumping over the middle of the car, not just the car, but the guy in the sunroof with the ball. And then, yes, like we said, actually, making a 180 out of it. It was nasty. Best first dunk. I mean, and that's the other thing. Did it first try. Like all these first try. That's amazing. So yeah, that's definitely this week's Jam Hot Chicken Jam of the Week. Easy. It's going to be a Mac McClung. You could have picked any of them, honestly. But yeah, Jam Hot Chicken, the sponsors of the show, and they're proudly bringing Jam's culture and hot chicken to the heart of Winter Park. They're a Nashville and LA inspired hot chicken shack, locally owned and operated there at 400 West New England Avenue, Suite 13 in Hannibal Square in Winter Park, Florida. You can follow them at Jam Hot Chicken on all social media, and you can also check out their website, jamhotchickenfl.com, to access the menu, online ordering, and all things Jam Hot. We're big fans of Jam Hot Chicken because they're big fans of the Magic and big fans of this fan community. And so, yeah, next time you're in Winter Park, you need something good to eat, check out Jam Hot Chicken and let them know the Six Man Show sent you.
This episode is also brought to you by some of our Hall of Fame and elite tier patrons. You first might be asking, what's a patron? So a patron is somebody who went to patreon.com/the Six Man Show, where for as little as $2 a month, they help support the show and help us do everything that we do. You can select other tiers and get other benefits, like getting access to our Discord, access to our monthly Zoom calls where we just get on there, talk Magic basketball. Sometimes we're able to give patrons like a behind the scenes look at things that are coming up, for the show. Or a lot of times, like, we're just getting feedback from them. Like, what do you all like? How can we bring more value? How can we make the show better? All that kind of stuff. So we shout out brand new patrons whenever we have them. So this week, shout out to Lou Campana, who joined our rookie tier level. Really appreciate your support. So we give a special shout out to brand new patrons whenever they join. And then we also have to shout out Halfrican, Jeremiah Quintero, Nick from the Cloud, Caleb Pete, and Daniel Anderson Berry. Those are some of our Hall of Fame and elite tier patrons, which again, we try to give a special thank you and a special shout out each and every episode. So if you want to join the mission and help grow this Magic fan base and this Magic community, you can help support us by going over to patreon.com/the Six Man Show. And now let's get back to the episode.
All right. So Jonathan, dunk contest happens. I'm flying high. I'm feeling great. My timeline is full of, obviously, first and foremost, it's Magic fans, right? I follow a lot of Magic fans on social media or Magic media people, and everyone's just, they're just glowing, right? Mac McClung's done it. Three-peat, convincingly, by the way. Again, all 50s, every dunk, crushed it, right? I keep scrolling a little bit, and I see there's a couple people on the internet that just didn't watch that dunk contest with the same lens that I did. There's a couple people that started picking apart Mac McClung, not just his dunk performance, but him, right? And so, like, the biggest tweet that rose up out of this was from Kevin O'Connor. Kevin O'Connor, a widely respected NBA journalist, a guy that I think you also respect, like
big
a guy
fan
that
of KOC.
big fan. Typically good takes, level-headed takes. But his tweet last night after the dunk contest was, Stephon Castle should have won. Better dunks without the use of gimmick props, and he's an actual NBA player. So I want to take this as two separate comments here, because those are two wildly different things, right? The first half saying Stephon Castle should have won. KOC thought he had better dunks without the use of gimmick props. Okay, that's an opinion thing, and it's wrong opinion, like it's a bad opinion. Like Stephon Castle,
the gimmick prop, by the way, is him jumping over a full motor vehicle.
Right.
Like,
so, but let's not pretend like that Mac McClung is the first one to do this stuff. Like props have been part of the dunk contest for 2 decades. Like it's part of the lore of this. It's part of the attraction of this, right? It's part of the fun, right? Are these props? And yeah, some of them are kind of gimmicky, but again, that's kind of how this thing works, right? But saying Stephon Castle should have won, it's an opinion, but it's wrong, right? Stephon Castle had a couple good dunks, like legit. I think they were good dunks. Got a 50 as well. But he also took almost the full 90 seconds to do one of his dunks. Like the dunk where, I don't know if you saw it, Jonathan, his assistant, I don't remember who it was, shot the ball and it went through the net on purpose, through the net. And so Stephon Castle grabbed it after it went through the net and then dunked it. If you watch when and where he took off from that dunk, it's actually not that impressive. Like he caught the ball after it was already almost to the ground and then jumped and dunked. Like it was not cool.
It's kind of a gimmick in itself, but it's just more the thing that's impressive about it is the timing. But again, if it takes you a minute and a half to get that down, then
right.
You kind of lose your luster.
Yeah, so that's part one, right? You can just have a bad opinion about a dunk contest. That's fine. Some people think Zach LaVine should have beat Aaron Gordon. He shouldn't have. That's a bad opinion, right? The second part is the part that really grinds my gears, right? The second part where he said, and he's an actual NBA player. Like that's just messed up right there, first off. Yeah, that's just an unnecessary...
It's a cheap shot.
It's an unnecessary cheap shot. It's an unnecessary dig. And let's not pretend like Mac McClung is just a nobody, right? Like Mac McClung is a elite G League player, right? First off, he's a two-way player, which does make him an NBA player, okay? He's on an NBA roster. This NBA roster could call him up at any time to play a game. He's paid as such. But he is an elite G League player. One of the best players in the league.
Arguably the best player in the G League.
Potentially the best. That's right. Already has... what is it? Not finals
G
MVP.
League MVP.
Yeah, season MVP.
Won a championship in the G League.
Right. So he's got all the accolades. So for this dig of, and he's an actual NBA player, it just felt totally uncalled for. And yeah, it felt like kind of personal, right? Like I don't know if he just has a problem with Mac McClung winning this, or maybe he thinks two-way players shouldn't be eligible. But I mean, Mac McClung single-handedly keeping the dunk contest afloat, in the eyes of the public and the media and stuff. So I don't know. There were a couple other people that, thought Stephon Castle should have won, but that was the one that really bothered me because he got personal at the end. I don't know. That just kind of, made me pretty upset.
Yeah, you can have an opinion. You can even have a bad opinion, but it's when you unnecessarily get personal, who, by the way, to take a personal shot at Mac McClung, who is one of the kindest, most sincere and genuine human beings in the NBA.
Yeah.
It's like you almost couldn't pick a worse person to take an unwarranted personal shot at. A guy who like literally is giving his all to live out his dream on a year in and year out basis and understands that he can only really help grow his brand. And like you said, continue to save NBA All-Star Weekend in the NBA dunk contest by participating in it each year. Like, think of how crappy the dunk contest would have been the last 3 years if it were not for Mac McClung.
Even Saturday, it was bad. It was a bad dunk contest. Luckily, the final, like I said, Stephon Castle had a couple nice dunks, including one that was a 50. But that first round was really bad, like historically bad. It was not fun.
Yeah. And then you have all of these guys like Ja and Giannis and Zach LaVine saying that, hey, Zach LaVine might have to do another one because of this dunk contest. And Ja is saying that like Mac is going to make me get in the dunk contest. And Giannis saying, if Ja does it, I'll do it. Right? Yeah. Like Mac's performance is like almost single-handedly keeping the dunk contest relevant and even reviving it to a certain extent if it causes these other guys to do that. So again, I'm a big fan of Kevin O'Connor. Does he always necessarily have the very best analysis, right? Maybe not, but he's a funny guy. He's entertaining. There are a lot of things that he says that are smart. I don't want to get into everything that I agree and disagree with KOC on, but this is by far the least favorite thing that has ever come out of his mouth or fingers or whatever, I guess you would say. This tweet here, I responded. I said, I'm a big fan of yours, but this is a lame take, because that's kind of how I felt. Kevin, what do you, let's, I guess, talk about Mac McClung and what he means in like the history of the NBA dunk contest, him being the only guy ever that has won it 3 consecutive years. I think, was it Nate Robinson who's also won it 3 times, but it wasn't in consecutive years.
Right.
So you cannot talk about the history of the NBA dunk contest at this point without mentioning Mac McClung. So, but what are your thoughts in terms of people saying like he's the greatest dunker ever, or, you know, some people were even saying that this was the greatest dunk contest performance last night. What do you think of that?
That one's a little much for me, right? Like, I still think Aaron Gordon had the best performance. Like
2016,
2016, beginning to end, was the best dunk contest performance I've ever seen. Right, his dunk where he put the ball under his legs, for me, is probably the best dunk in contest history. Which is, I know that's a strong statement to make, but I'm serious. That dunk was outrageous. So no, I don't think that was the best performance in dunk contest history, but I do think Mac McClung is certainly top 5 dunk contest contestants ever. Maybe even top 3, right? Like I like you talk about Nate Robinson. I didn't think Nate Robinson was all that good. You know, part of the, you know, the aura of the Nate Robinson dunk contest is his height. You know, we talked about
right.
Mac McClung being 6'2", Nate Robinson is under 6 foot, if I remember right.
Like 5'9" or 5'10".
Exactly, yeah. So like that's part of it. I didn't think so. Part of the Nate Robinson thing was that alone is impressive. Obviously,
the fact that he can even get up there to dunk,
yes,
should be a 50.
That is not lost on me. But the actual quality of the dunks and like the innovation of the dunks and stuff, I don't remember it being that impressive. But yeah, I think Mac McClung is up there with the best of them. Now, some other guys from early on, the dunk contest was a time to revolutionize the game, right? Like I think about, this is obviously before our time, but like Dominique Wilkins, right? Changed the dunking scene with his dunks back then, right? Michael Jordan, of course, you know, I mean, some iconic moments for him, right? You think about Vince
There's a
Carter.
Logo. Right,
exactly. Yeah.
One,
you think about Vince Carter doing things we've never seen before. Jason Richardson doing things we've never seen before, right? So these guys are remembered for like revolutionizing dunking and the dunk contest and all those things. But to just make a habit of winning them, you know, 3 in a row, and yeah, he's got to be up there. Certainly top 5 for me as far as dunk contest contestants goes.
I also think there's like just the we don't have the premier names in recent years, right? Like Zach LaVine in what would that have been, 2015? Like that was really special. You know, the year that Victor Oladipo was in it as well. Like that was really special because Zach LaVine was still relatively young in the league, wasn't a big name, and just came out and lit the dunk contest on fire. Yeah. And then the next year, everybody kind of just expects Zach LaVine to run it back, in which he did. I mean, technically speaking, even though Aaron Gordon was robbed, but what made that so special was that everybody knew what Zach LaVine was bringing. And even Magic fans, I don't think we expected Aaron Gordon to put on the show that he did. So the fact that he was able to match Zach LaVine in that, and both of those guys doing things that we had never seen before, that I think is why that dunk contest will always sort of live in history as the best one ever. And when you go back to Dr. J and Dominique Wilkins and Michael Jordan and Vince Carter less so, like, you know, the honey pot dunk and, you know, the 360 windmill, that kind of stuff. Like he kind of took it to another level, you know, back in the early 2000s where, you know, Dominique and Michael Jordan, it was really just like, oh, look at how athletic these guys are and that kind of thing. I don't think it's fair to compare those 1-to-1, just such different eras. Like we talk about Michael versus LeBron and that kind of stuff. It is such a different era. But when you talk about Mac McClung, like he's certainly in the top 5. He has to be for winning it 3 times in a row. The only criticism that I would have of Mac McClung's performance is that it was essentially the same, like a variation of the same dunk.
Right.
Oh, and it's like it's crazy impressive. If you just take each dunk and put it in a vacuum and just grade it on what it is, they were all incredible. But when you see him do sort of the same variation of jumping over somebody, grabbing the ball between his legs and then finishing it, I understand why people are like, oh, well, maybe it wasn't, because that was my criticism of Zach LaVine back in 2016 is as him and Aaron Gordon sort of went into overtime and then into double overtime, Zach LaVine was kind of doing variations of what he had already done in the previous rounds, where Aaron Gordon was still kind of building on and creating different dunks like in the moment. So if people want to criticize that part of Mac's performance, I mean, I guess, but just when you look at it like dunk for dunk, and I feel like we have to stop forgetting about the first and second rounds when we look at this. Like if you get to the end and two guys have 50s in the final round, they're kind of tied, you should go back and be like, well, who had the better dunks in the first couple of rounds? I feel like that should matter in a sense. Yep. But to think about, hey, we've got two Magic guys that are both in the top 5 all time. I think Aaron Gordon sort of sits alone at the mountaintop. I don't know that we'll ever see anybody sort of get to that level. But yeah, really happy for Mac. And it is, still kind of weird that the Magic in one regard or another are kind of keeping the dunk contest afloat over the last decade.
It's true. Yeah. This kind of led into conversations we've heard all season long, but people saying, why isn't Mac playing for the Magic? I mean, for the Orlando Magic, I should say, not the Osceola Magic, right? And so do you think this dunk contest performance gives him some opportunities for the Orlando Magic over these last 26 games or whatever it is? You think we see him on the court?
I hope not because he's not a good player, but I wouldn't expect any of the two-way guys to get real significant playing time going down the stretch, because we need our regular, standard contract and regular rotation guys healthy if we're going to have a real chance at staying out of the play-in. If McClung is getting regular rotation minutes, either something miraculous has happened or something really terrible has happened.
Yeah.
And the way this season has gone, if you tell me 2 months from now that McClung finished the last 26 games of the year playing significant minutes, I'm going to guess that something really, really awful has happened. And I do think he eventually should and will get a shot somewhere. I just don't know that I see that being in Orlando.
Yeah. I don't know. I hope he gets an opportunity somewhere. I hope it's in Orlando, but it definitely feels like if he hasn't played yet this season, considering we had some games where we had 8-9 healthy guys, if he didn't get any burn in those games, then it feels like it's just not going to happen for him this season. But who knows? Even if there are blowout games, I'd love to see him get some time. If it's home games, obviously we have this homestand right now, and so if some of those games are blowouts and he's on the bench, I'd love to see him just get in the game and get a shot, because we haven't even seen that, honestly. From him this season at least. So we'll see. But just because you do well in a dunk contest does not mean you get to get to walk onto an NBA court right away. Not that he assumes that. I don't want to say that, but I just seeing some fans just say, "Oh, he won the dunk contest. Why aren't we playing him?" It's not exactly how that works. But yeah, hopefully he gets some opportunities this year.
Kevin, the last thing that I wanted to talk to you about is now that we're going into the last 26 games of the season, and we'll talk about the week ahead, but the week ahead is still really in this stretch of like 11 games dating back to February 8th when you played San Antonio. This stretch of 11 games where we've said you have to go 7-4, 8-3 during that stretch to probably really have a chance at making a run and staying out of the play-in. And then over the course of the last 16 games, you've probably got to be somewhere like 16-10, 17-9, maybe even 15-11 at worst. You're definitely going to have to finish at least 2 or 3 games over 500, I think, to stay out of the play-in. But one thing as I was getting ready for this pod that I was going back and looking through is dating back to Jamal Mosley's first year with the Magic, the 21-2022 season. The Magic have played better post All-Star break than they did pre-All-Star break. If you go back and you look at each season, the Magic have had a better record, a better win percentage, and a better defensive rating post All-Star break than they did pre-All-Star break. And that is true of each season, Kevin. So that has been the first 3 seasons now. I don't know if it's fair to just expect that to happen, but I'm just going off of history and what we've seen from Jamal Mosley. I don't know what it is that he does during the All-Star break. I don't know if he takes a break or if he's just sitting like a mad scientist in his office trying to figure out a way to get this team to play better, to play harder. Maybe it's the guys just getting rest over the All-Star break. I don't know. But if that trend continues, like, the Magic might be significantly better than they were pre-All-Star break. And we've seen them play really good stretches, but really just talking about the month of January, where you had 4 wins in January, 3 wins in the month of February. I don't think that the Magic going like 16-10, 17-9 is completely outside the realm of the possibilities post All-Star break. Again, if we're to believe what we saw the first 3 seasons with Jamal Mosley.
Yeah, especially, we've talked about it, especially this stretch that we're entering in right now. This is the stretch that makes or breaks the season, honestly. We have a few games left in this stretch. They start Thursday, in Atlanta, but after that, you've got, 7 straight home games, and a lot of those are very winnable games, and so I think it's very possible. The other thing, we talked a little bit about this earlier as far as, teams or where the Magic might finish, in the Eastern Conference, looking at some of the teams that they're chasing, right? Like the Pistons, they've got a difficult stretch coming up here after the All-Star break. They couple road games, but then they have a homestand, which sounds good, but it's the Clippers, the Celtics, and the Nuggets to start that off. So tough stretch of games for them. Feels like there's ground to be made there. Miami, who you're now ahead of for now, at least for a half game. They've got a mixed stretch, right out of the All-Star break. Some easy ones, some tough ones. Milwaukee, who we just talked about a second ago, they've got a difficult stretch here after the All-Star break. Clippers, they do have the Wizards, but Clippers, Heat, Rockets, Nuggets, Mavericks, Hawks, Mavericks. That's a tough stretch, and so it feels like this could be the time to make some moves, not just for the Magic to start playing better, but potentially to gain some ground on those teams around them. But yeah, I feel like it's definitely possible. History has proven that, like you said, you can't argue with stats, and statistically, the Magic have just been better after the All-Star break under Jamal Mosley, and it feels like all the ingredients are there to do it again this year. But again, how the last month and a half has gone, it's almost one of those things you got to kind of see it to believe it, if you ask me.
Yeah. Looking forward to that, and looking forward to this week. The Magic will be back in action on Thursday, playing in Atlanta. Start the post All-Star break with a little road home back-to-back. So they'll be at home taking on the Memphis Grizzlies on Friday. And then they'll stay home and they play the Washington Wizards on Sunday. It feels like the Magic have to go 2-1 in this stretch. Thursday should be a get-back game over the Atlanta Hawks. Just you need to win that game for the standings, starting off the post All-Star break, with a bang. Memphis has been playing pretty well this year. I have a hard time saying that this team is just going to come out of the gates and go 3-0. So in 3 games, if they are going to lose one of those, I would pick the Memphis game. And then to win on Sunday at home over the Wizards, that's a must win. That is an absolute must win. If this team has the break and they can't come out and beat Washington at home, then sound the alarm.
Yeah. So really quick, Thursday's game, for me, I circle it as a must win, which sounds wild, but you just lost to Atlanta on last Monday. So you're 0-1 against them in the season, and right now you're only a half game up, right? So if they beat you Thursday night, they pass you in the standings, plus they go 2-0 against you in the head-to-head. If this comes down to a tiebreaker, that's huge. Magic have to win on Thursday on the road. I think it's going to be really tough, but I'll pick them to do it. Like you said, Sunday against Washington, have to win that game. And honestly, I know beggars can't be choosers, but to me, you have to win it convincingly, right? If the Magic have to squeak out a win against the Wizards, that's just not good enough for me. Like you said, Friday at home against the Grizzlies, that's the tough one. Grizzlies are also on the second night of a back-to-back, by the way. They play in Indiana the night before. So Magic have that going for them. Magic will be the home team, obviously, on Friday. But Memphis is really good. They're playing really well. I hope the Magic can be competitive. But I think I'm going to go with you barely. I think the Grizzlies barely beat the Magic on Friday, and I'll pick the Magic to go 2-1 as well.
Yep. Need to come out of the gates hot, and that would at that point make us 4-2 through 6 games of that 11-game stretch, in which we've said you have to go 7-4
at least,
or 8-3. So
yeah.
if you're 6-2, or I'm sorry, 4-2, start to feel pretty good about being able to do that, I think. Yeah. And then you've got a tough one: Cleveland, Golden State, Toronto, Chicago. I know, like, kind of getting ahead of ourselves, but I guess really getting ahead of ourselves here. But going to that stretch, Toronto, Chicago, I feel like you have to sweep that.
Yeah. I mean, Toronto, they got new pieces, right? Brandon Ingram. But yeah, I mean, you're at home. You've been home for, what will have been, 2 weeks. Hopefully there's some momentum going. Look, the Magic have done really well on these long homestands over the last couple seasons.
And they're 17-10 this year at home. Missing, Paolo and Franz and Jalen for, significant stretches of the year. We need to obviously do some work on the away record, but 17-10, so that you're 10-19 on the road so far this year, but you got to stack wins during this homestand here.
Yep. Especially because of the road trip that comes up right after that. But again, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Let's focus on these home games after the Atlanta game, of course, on the road. But yeah, let's stack up some wins and see what we can do.
Yeah, and hey, just looking at some tweets on social media about this All-Star game, and people seem to hate it. Shocker.
Interesting. I'll have to take a look at that, and maybe I'll watch the championship game at 11:30 at night or whenever it's going to happen.
We'll see. All right. I think that's going to do it for this one, Kevin. We'll be back on Wednesday, which will be like the eve before the start of the post All-Star break.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. Episode will come out Thursday like always. But yeah, we'll record Wednesday.
Yeah, we'll record Wednesday and we'll sort of talk about that. It'll come out on Thursday. There'll be a game that night. But yeah, maybe we'll have something cool next episode. Maybe not. Maybe. Next episode 500.
Episode 500 is coming up. It's not next episode, but yeah, next week will be episode 500. Which
all right, so
we might.
That's when we might have something cool. Who knows? Maybe not. Maybe. Possible. Maybe. Might not happen. Who knows? Yep. Hopefully it does.
Yeah.
All right, let's wrap it up. That is going to do it for this one. For Kevin Tucker, this has been Jonathan Osborne. You all have been listening to the Sixth Man Show, and we will catch you guys next time. See ya.
Thanks for listening to the Sixth Man Show. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes and Spotify to get new episodes downloaded directly to your phone. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to give us a 5-star rating and a review. It helps out the show a lot. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Sixth Man Show. We'll catch you guys next time. Go Magic!